Hi, I'm Shane with ScaleTrains and happy to be here at the Blissfield Model Railroad Club in Blissfield, Michigan. Far back in the distance there. I want to say thank you so much to the Blissfield Model Railroad Club for hosting tonight. Fred and I have been communicating for several weeks now and really appreciate the club hosting tonight. If you haven't been here before, you're a guest. I'll tell you what, the railroad is amazing. Make sure that you get a chance to take a look around. The modeling is absolutely phenomenal. So we're going to get started, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Fred to lock both doors and not let you guys out until you buy trains. No, we're not going to do that at all. What we're going to do is hopefully have some fun together tonight. We'll do a few things. If you didn't get a chance beforehand, make sure that you put your name in the black box. About 10 minutes or so after we get done with the presentation, Michelle will draw some names. We'll give away some road trip shirts that have this exclusive shield on them that you can only get as a winner. There's hats, we've got tumblers, we've got some gift cards, and she'll do a great job of drawing names when we get done. And also too, if you're a member of the club, we're going to send these to the club. If you're not a member, make sure to put your address on the back. This particular road trip has been much more, how would you say this, well attended than we would expect. And we ran out of the road trip pins that you normally get for coming to a meet and greet. So we'll make sure that you get that. We'll send a bunch to the club, and plus, if you're not a member, we'll ship it to you directly. And when we get done as well, you're welcome to come and pick up the models. I think this is our 16th or so stop this trip. 18th trip. I knew Michelle would know. This is our 18th stops in just over 3 weeks. And the models have been all handled a ton. And so you can't hurt them. They've been loved. Don't worry. And with that too, we're going to share our story and how we got started, and how we're here today with you is nothing short of a miracle. And we'll also take a look at how model trains are made. We'll look at everything from the design process, the research process, to tooling, to manufacturing. We'll even take a tour of the factory, and be happy to answer any questions you have as we go along. And there'll be some time for some Q&A at the end. And you can ask me anything. I've been asked everything under the sun. Things like, why do you make model trains in China, to why do model trains cost so much, to my personal favorite, why in the world did you pick that railroad to do? So you guys won't offend me. Happy to answer those questions. And then, of course, make sure you see the club afterward as well. And with that, we'll get started. And I know you guys would love to spend the entire night and be bored to tears and hear my life story from when I was this high, right? No, we're not going to do that to you. This is actually about our team, and we're going to fast forward to the summer of 2013. I want to introduce you to Mike Hopkin, and that's his wife Sylvia there. When this idea was hatched, Mike was the director of product development at Athearn. And then this is Michelle and I and our family, and I was actually the marketing manager at Athearn. And I actually worked for the parent company in Central Illinois, which is Horizon. Mike worked in Southern California, and we would travel a lot. We'd meet up probably 12 to 15 weekends a year, spend at least 5 days together. We're spending upwards of 100 days a year, and Mike and I got to be really good friends. And we were at the National Train Show in Atlanta, and I have no idea how we got on this subject, but it was like, wouldn't it be really cool if we could start our own model train company? And it's like, oh yeah, but, why leave these great jobs that we have? Why take the risk? Where would you come up with the money? All those kind of doubts that you have. But it was that seed that got planted. And it's like, well, what if we did this? So we started working on a business plan in the fall of 13 and came up with a few things. It's the opportunity to live the American dream. Now you're risking your family's fortune, so you pray that you don't make it the American nightmare. And it's a chance to chart your own course and make the final decisions. There were projects that we always wanted to do, but we could never get off the ground. And another thing too, I said to Mike, look, Mike, if we're going to take this leap of faith, let's do this not to be a Me Too model railroad company, but let's do this to push our industry. Let's try new things. And we worked on a lot of different innovations. So the first 4 things we worked on were our brands, and we wanted them to be very specific. So we've got kit classics, which are simple to build kits that are budget priced. We've got operator for folks who like to run trains, aren't as worried about all the detail, and are looking for value. We've got rivet counter, which is probably where 80 or 90% of our sales are today. And that's railroad, road number, and era-specific detail. Come on in. And then we also have our museum quality line, which has kind of evolved over time, and now it's become legendary HO locomotives. We started with some simple things. How many of you guys have ever built a blue box kit? I'm going to bet just about the whole room. I see a lot of hands. And so you remember the old blue box kits that had the metal tab that would snap over the couplers? And you put that car together and you put it back in its box, and maybe you brought it to the club or took it somewhere, and it rattled around, and when it got there, it didn't have any couplers on it, right? It's happened to all of us. And so I said, Mike, what if we designed a package that when you build the model, you could actually set it back inside, it'll safely nest in there, and you can take it where you want to go. So that's where we came up with the Kit Classics packaging. And then on the other end of the world, it's like, what is that flag planting project, where we can put it in the ground and say, this is what we can do. And that's where we came up with the big blow turbine, and it was absolutely revolutionary when it came out. Had things like the class lights that you could cycle between red, white, green, and off. First time that had ever been done. We had the ground light on the engineer's side. You've got the cab light that comes on during startup. Inside the cab, you've got the control stand with all the printed gauges, and that lights up. And then as you move back to the B unit, you can slide open the doors. You can actually see the jet turbine inside. And then if you look down the exhaust stack, you can see the spinning turbine fan blades. And then, of course, it comes in that beautiful leather-like presentation box. And there was one more thing, too, and Mike kept telling me in the beginning, and I really didn't understand it then because my faith wasn't nearly as strong as Mike's. But he said, Shane, God's bringing us together for a much higher purpose. And I get that now. We'll share a couple of things a little bit later. Well, I knew sales, I knew marketing, knew business. Mike knew the development side of the house. But boy, you've got to have someone that can actually put the logos on in the right place and get the fonts correct and get the positioning right of all the lettering and get your paint breaks and all those things done. And that wasn't Mike or I. So we decided we'd approach Joe Olvera. This is Joe. Joe was the art director at Athearn. And Joe had a pretty young family then at the time. And he worked with Mike in Southern California. And we're going to go to Train Fest in Milwaukee in 2013. We've told Joe that we want to get with him after the show on Saturday, but he has no idea what it's about. And we get done with the show, have dinner, go back to my hotel room, and I'm sweating bullets. I think Joe, after we tell him what we're thinking, is going to look at us and say, you guys have lost your minds. What are you thinking? And we spend about an hour sharing with Joe what our ideas are. And I get done and I look at Joe and I say, Joe, what do you think? That fast, Joe says, I'm in. And I'm like, Joe, you should probably talk to your wife. And Joe says, no, I'm in. I'm like, Joe, really, you need to talk to Alexis. And he went back to California, spoke with Alexis, and decided that this is what he wanted to do as well. But we were still kind of going back and forth, really waffling. One of the biggest challenges we had is we had enough money that we could do the big blow turbine project. We could do the water tenders that go along with it. We could do the box cars, the Kit Classics cars, and we could do the tank cars. But the problem is we were going to run out of money before we could get the next projects done. And it was like, how are we ever going to bridge that gap? And I liken it to launching off an aircraft carrier. If you ever watch an airplane take off, it goes screaming down the deck, and when it gets out to the end of the deck, it kind of does that drop, and then it takes off. Well, that's you trying to get your cash flow to keep your company going. Well, the parent company of Athearn, which I mentioned is Horizon, when the original owners retired, they were awesome people, and they made all of us employee owners of the company. And on the very first business day of 2014, Horizon's having a global meeting. There's probably 700 to 800 employees at that point in about 12 countries around the world. And this meeting is at the exact same time everywhere. It never happened in the 23 years that I'd been there. So you knew this was a really big deal. Well, we're in this meeting and we're learning as employee owners that we're being bought out. And suddenly we go from having this much capital to having this much capital. I'm literally in that meeting texting Mike saying, Mike, this is God telling us it's time to go. And that's the day we made the final decision that this is what we're going to do. So a ton of things had to happen, right? You got to figure out who can actually design your trains, do the CAD work, who can do the tooling, who can do the manufacturing. And the good news is Mike had been going to China probably 15, 20 years at that time. So we had a pretty good idea who we wanted to work with, but you still got to go over and make that happen. And in that January through March timeframe, that's prime train show season. So we were traveling all the time, and we found 2 weekends in a row that we could go. And it was right after Chinese New Year. That's when the factory shut down for a couple of weeks, and then they restart. And it's a really good time to visit. And I'm going to fly out of Central Illinois, and Mike's going to fly out of Southern California. We're going to meet in Hong Kong, and then go find all the folks we need. Well, up to this point, it's just the three families that know, and I'm going to fly out of Champaign, Illinois. And if you guys have never flown through Champaign, it is like a super tiny airport. You got one airline, that's American. You got 2 gates, so not much there. And while I'm getting ready for this trip, I'm typing up some notes. and I'm pretty nervous, kind of wondering what it's going to be like going out of the country. Never really been out of the U.S., but I've been to Canada, but that's kind of USA light, right? Not a whole lot different than here. And we all have these visions of China with military and armed guards and all that stuff, but it's not like a lot like that at all. And as I'm getting ready, I hear this really familiar voice. And it says, "Hey, Shane, what are you doing?" And as I look up, it's my boss's boss. This is a guy that's responsible for like 30 plus brands at Horizon. And I say, "Well, I'm going on vacation. What are you doing?" And he says, "We're going to visit the factories in China." And I'm like, uh-oh. And so we talk a little bit longer, and we learned that the number one guy in RC Aircraft, he's making the trip as well. And we talk some more and find out that the number two guy in the entire company, the vice president, is on a Mike's Airline United and going as well. And they're going to meet up in Hong Kong too. So they finally asked me the big question, right? Like, where are you going on vacation? And I tell them, I mean, I don't think I can lie because we're on the same flight probably. And I say, well, I'm going to Hong Kong. I got a good friend who says it's a great time to visit after Chinese New Year. And they're like, oh, well, let's tell you about some places to eat and some sights to see. And so I jot all this down, and we get on the bird in Chicago. And it's 16 hours over to Hong Kong. It's the worst 16 hours of your life. And in those days, I was no status, so I'm center seat coach, worried for the whole 16 hours about what I'm going to do to feed my family when we get back. And we get over, and I go through customs with the Horizon people, go through baggage claim, and waiting for Mike to show up and just have this dream sunk already. And I take my phone out of my pocket, turn it on, and there's a text from Mike, and he says, "Great news, my flight's been delayed 2 hours." So I wrap up with the Horizon people, they go do their thing, Mike gets there, and the next morning we go into mainland, and it was absolutely amazing how quickly everything lined up. We thought it would take about a week. We got it all done in 5 days. So Mike said, "Hey, let's make that take that vacation to Hong Kong," and he gave me the 7-day tour in 24 hours. It was absolutely awesome. And on the return trip, I'm going to fly through Tokyo Narita. And if you don't know, China's 12 hours later than us, so it's like 7 something in the morning over there right now. And if you've ever worked a swing shift, how you flip your body, I have no idea. I was an absolute mess. I hadn't slept much that whole week. So I decided to pay the $50, go to the American Airlines lounge so I can kind of get my thoughts together. And about 15 minutes into it, when you know it, I heard that voice again. It says, "Hey, Shane, how was your vacation?" And I'm like, "Let me show you the photos." And we talked about my vacation. They were none the wiser, and it all worked out. And so when while we were in China, we learned that we had a lot more capacity. And so we decided to approach Paul Ellis. And Paul was the project manager. No, you're all right. Paul was a project manager at Athearn, and Paul had done things like the GP38-2, the GP40-2, SDP45. For us, Paul's had his hands in just about every locomotive. And Paul wasn't like Joe. He took a lot of time to think about it, and finally decided to come on with us about mid-March of 14. And we had about 6 weeks or so left before we were going to leave. And I challenged the guys with 2 things. I said, "Guys, number one, Athearn and Horizon have been fantastic to us all these years. They're about to lose 4 key people. We can't just walk out the door. We've got to give them a plan." So we worked much further out on the production plan. We worked on more new tooling projects. We've got more artwork done than normal. So that way they had something they could follow when we left. And the other thing I said is, we have to leave with our integrity. Not one drawing, not one photo, absolutely nothing walks out of the building. We have to start from scratch. And so we started building our library. Today, we're well over 1,000 books in our library. We have cases upon cases of builder's drawings, paint lettering diagrams, all kinds of paper materials. On our server, we're now approaching 1 million digital images, and we're always on the hunt for more. You know, it just never fails. You're working on a project, you're working, let's say, on a locomotive, and the factory comes to you and says, "There's this one widget that we just don't have a great picture or drawing of. You know, can you give us some guidance?" And you go through everything that you've got and you just can't find it. So you make the best educated guess you've got. And then, of course, the day you make the announcement, someone goes, "Hey, that part's wrong. Here's a picture." So then you have to fix it. But that's okay. That's how it works some days. If you've shot slides in the past and you've always wanted your slide collection digitized, we'll do that for you for free. All we ask is we keep a digital collection. We won't share that. You'll get your originals back. You'll get digitals back. Or if you're shooting today, and you know, as we go through these different parts of the country, There's always railroads that have a great following, like Lake State here. You know, you're always looking for those type of photos that you don't normally get, because as hard as we try, none of us are experts in every railroad across the country. So we're always looking for that help. If that's something you'd like to do, visit with Michelle or I afterwards. We'll get your contact information. We'll pass that along to Mike, and he'll follow up with you. And then, you know, we had a lot to get done. We left on May the 2nd of 2014, and we're going to announce the company in 18 months and 2 weeks, which is going to be a pretty big challenge. So how many of you would love to place a pre-order with a company that you've never heard of that's promising you the best product ever? Yeah, us either, right? I see some heads saying, no way. We wouldn't either, right? And in that very first business plan, we said when we make a new product announcement, you're going to see it, touch it, hold it, hear it, feel it, so you know that it's not vaporware. We've actually created the product. And, you know, for a freight car, from the time you say, yeah, we're going to do that project and get started on it in earnest, to delivery is about 18 to 24 months. For a locomotive, you're looking at 2 to 3 years. We're going to shrink all that into 18 months, which is going to be a pretty tall order. And so right away, we were in Union, Illinois to document the number 18 turbine. It's got the bigger tender. The next week, we were in the Ogden, Utah, documenting the number 26 with the smaller tender. And a little later that summer, Michelle and I took a family vacation. We went out to Yellowstone. That's our son. We stopped in Cheyenne, and he helped me document the water tenders there. Between all three places, we shot well over 5,000 images to get all those small details correct. So let's take a look and see what that process looks like. In the early days, it would have been the four of us. We've really been blessed. We now have about 10 team members in the product development team. We now have an annual product development summit where everybody comes in from across the country and we all share our ideas. And we'll start collecting as much information on those projects. Here's the builder's drawing for the turbine. That drawing is 15 feet long. It's going to give you the major dimensions, the length, the width, the height, truck centers, those kind of things, but it doesn't give you all those little details. You'll notice the books on the table. In the early days, everything was on hard drives. Now it's all up on the cloud. And in a moment, you're going to see what I like to call the Holy Grail. And this is where the research really kind of, comes together. And it's a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, down the left-hand side, whatever project you're working on is going to be all the railroads that own that particular locomotive or freight car. And then across the top are columns. And every column represents a detail. So on the turbine project, not too crazy. They first came out in the late 50s. There were 30 road numbers, came in 2 deliveries, 1 through 7, 8 through 30. You can look at them as a group as delivered. And then you're going to come back, though, because they're going to change their life. So you'll look at them again in the mid-60s. That's about halfway through their life. And you're going to see a lot of details start to change. And then we looked at them again right before they went to the museums, so we could get those right as well. Now I'm going to pick on a locomotive you guys are all familiar with, the SD40-2. And the 40-2, they first came out in the early 70s. They're going through rebuilds now. They're still on the railroad today. And I'll use BN as an example. They were the biggest owner, had something like 700 or 800 locomotives. And BN would get them in batches, right? So if you go back to their as-delivered versions, maybe they got a batch of 50 or a batch of 100, you can actually take that whole batch and then go across in all the columns and all the details. But then the next time you look at it, you've actually got to go road number by road number. So let's say when they got repainted into BN whiteface, you have to actually look at each individual number within a specific time frame. Or you've got to look at it around the BNSF merger. You might look at it after they got rebuilt because you got to follow that kind of rabbit trail of how did all those things change. And what's really crazy about the 40-2, we just finished up our second group of tooling. And between the research and the design, we could do now SD40-2s every 9 to 12 months and not repeat the same railroad, paint scheme, or era for the next 20 years. That's how much variety there is. And we believe it's the most expensive HO locomotive ever done. Between the two groups of tooling and all the research, we now have over $750,000 invested in that locomotive. Come on in. So, come on in. You're fine. And then, so I mentioned that we're always out on the hunt for new photos. Mike lives in Southern California, so he gets out to the desert on a fairly regular basis. Here he's catching a stray AC 4400 for CP. You never know what you're going to find. A lot of times when we're out on the road trip, we're hunting around, seeing what we can find as well. Once we finish that research package, then it's on to the design team in mainland China. Kind of come around the corner if you can see better. And this is our actual design team here. We have 6 full-time design engineers, plus their manager, Benny. This is Benny here. He's working on an ES44 Gevo. And every single color that you see there is an individual part. And every one of those parts is hand assembled. And we can do cutaways, so we can see like the gear train, what kind of radius is that locomotive going to turn. You can see where the speakers are. This is our motor, and you'll notice the motor actually sits down in the fuel tank. And we've got these drive lines that are almost perfectly straight out to the gear towers. Because they're almost straight, you get more energy out there. You're going to get more pulling power. Other manufacturers are going to be at an angle. You can look through the screens and actually see the dynamic brakes. As the locomotive moves forward, you'll see the cab interior. Once we finish design, then it's off to tooling. And now we start with the CNC process, and all of our models are done in hardened steel. Some of the models we've acquired are done in aluminum, or a lot of manufacturers will use aluminum because it's a lot less expensive. But the problem with aluminum is that mold opens and closes, it's going to heat up, it's going to distort over time, and it's going to need a lot of cleanup. Plus the plastic is going to flash. In other words, it's going to run where it's not supposed to. Come on in. Come on in. We'll wait on you here. That's it. So now the challenge is you got to get those super fine details, right? So we cut copper electrodes. And this is the SD45 project that's sitting on the floor. For this particular project, there's 5,000 copper electrodes, and it took 7,000 for the entire project. We're getting ready to do a whole new group of tooling for the SD45. There'll be another 5,000 to 7,000 copper electrodes for that project. Now, what the copper electrode does, you'll see this arm here that's going up and down. It's literally passing the electric current down through the arm, through the copper electrode, and then burning that design into the steel tool. Now, here's the crazy part. To get that really fine detail, like if you look at a turbine and you look inside the ladders, there's dimples, which are rivets. It takes 3 to 5 copper electrodes to burn in one rivet detail. That's why it takes thousands and thousands of those to get that final detail. This is an actual mold. That's a truck tool. That's what the plastic will flow into. In the bottom right corner, that is die-cast tooling. It works very similarly to injection molded tooling. This is the mold base itself. That's what will go into the molding machine, and we'll actually create the part, and we'll see that here in just a little bit. So one of the things that had to happen too during that 18 months as we're preparing to do business, in California they don't enforce non-compete agreements, but where Michelle and I lived in Illinois, they do. So we had to move at least 150 miles. We always talked about retiring in the mountains of Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, so that's why we moved to Tennessee. And this was actually shot from our house right after we moved in. And you'll see this little blue building there. It literally went for sale the day after we moved in, and Michelle's like, you need to go across the street and take a look at that. And I'm like, no, I got a much better idea. See this farm ground? I'm not a farmer. Let's get some bids and we'll build a building on our land. Now, what was going on in the back of my head was like, hey, look, if we don't make it, I get an awesome barn out of the deal. So I was planning ahead. And we got the bids in, and it was way more than we could afford. So in the springtime, I said, you're right, I'll go take a look at it. And so in the summer of 15, we bought the building, had it totally gutted. The only thing that's original is the structural steel and the concrete. Also bought the acreage around it, and that served as our headquarters from late 15 through 2022. Also in 2015, we announced our company at Train Fest in Milwaukee in November of that year. We had a preview party with a bunch of industry guests, and then the very next day we pulled back the curtains, announced our first products, and then it was time to get things manufactured. So let's go back and take a look at how that works. This is virgin plastic. This is what will go into the molding machine and actually mold the part. This is one of only 2 robots in the entire factory. And all this robot does is, in this case, is coming over, picking up an underframe, going to bring it over and deposit it in a bin box. Everything else is done by an operator. And They have a lot more molding machines. This is an operator working on a C39-8 body. When he takes it off, he's going to take a quick look at it to make sure the plastic flowed where it's supposed to. If it didn't, and this is called a short shot, that body will be ground up and reused the plastic later. Then it goes to subassembly, then on to paint. We use a water-based paint. We're using an automotive style gun because airbrushes don't lend themselves well to mass production. It's going to be painted by hand, set out to dry. This is like a baker's rack. It's a giant metal screen. And you'll see these straight lines here. That's actually masking tape, sticky side up. And these are horns. And one by one, someone's put all those horns on that masking tape. So have you ever got a model and you're looking at your body and you're looking at your detail parts and the shades are off from each other just a little bit in the colors? Yeah, see a lot of heads nodding. It's like painting, you know, a bedroom in your house. You don't buy 2 gallons of paint, run out and go buy another gallon because they're not going to match. So while we're painting bodies, we're painting all the detail parts as well. Now the crazy thing is, once this is painted, it's got to come out and dry, and you'll see like racks upon racks of detail parts. Well, they're going to have to come back and take all the horns off, take that masking tape off, put fresh masking tape on, and then they're going to have to flip the horns over because you're going to paint the other side. That'll go back into paint, and those will get painted. The next scene is grab irons, and you'll notice there's a long leg on the edge. There's literally a person off screen with a pair of tweezers. Come on in. There's a person off screen with a pair of tweezers, one by one, putting them in the foam. There's literally thousands of grab irons there. They'll take those grab irons in, they'll paint them, and then they'll snip off the long leg, and you'll have buckets upon buckets of different colors for different projects. This is called masking, and if you look at the outside edges of the mask, it looks like it's just been ran over by a truck. But what's really important is where the rectangle is, where he's painting that chessy vermilion orange. Those edges are really sharp and crisp, and you'll notice he's keeping pressure on it as it comes across. He's making sure that the paint doesn't run. He's going to clean that mask about every 5 to 7 times, and when he takes it off in a moment, you're going to see him take a quick look to make sure that all the edges are good and sharp. If they're not, he's got just a moment to clean that off and redo it, or the body has to be scrapped. This is my favorite scene. This is the DM&E Mount Rushmore SD40-2. And the Mount Rushmore logo has 9 colors on it. And you'll see as it comes across here, it's putting the first 5 colors on. And you'll see kind of Mount Rushmore come into view. It's going to slide back. She's going to take that body off, put another body on, and grab a magnifying glass. If you ever got a model and you're looking at the multicolor herald or logo or printing, and you look at the edges and it's kind of fuzzy, it's not quite crisp. What she's doing is she's making sure that all 5 of those layers laid on top of each other perfectly. If they don't, that body has to be scrapped, and then they have to reset the machine. Now the crazy part is, I mentioned there are 9 colors. That's got to go to another machine and have 4 more colors laid on top of there perfectly, and that's what it looks like with all 9 colors on it. This is final assembly. Now they wouldn't let us shoot a lot on the final assembly line, so we're going to have to use our imaginations a little bit. But imagine like behind me would be like stacks of locomotive bodies or freight car bodies or mechanisms. And then we've got a table about yay wide, 100+ feet long. And there's be a table here with some parts, and kitty corner from it, another table with some parts, and it goes that way all the way down the line. And what happens is the first person grabs that locomotive body, grabs their part, puts it on, sets it in the middle. Next person grabs their part, grabs that body, puts it on, sets it in the middle, and it goes that way all the way down the line until it's fully assembled. Now a mechanism, before it gets married to the body, it's actually going to be taken in and test run. We're going to check all the light functions, we're going to check all the sound functions, actually going to turn the sound off, listening for any kind of gear train noise, binding in the drivetrain, motor noise, anything like that, because that's the last chance to fix it. Then it gets married to the body and it's off to final packaging. And final packaging, it'll get its labeling, it'll get its manual, it'll get inspected one last time, it'll be cleaned if needed, and then we'll put it in what we call vellum, which is a plastic material that keeps the body from being scratched in transit. And then we ship full container nowadays. In the early days we didn't. This is a 20-foot container that was coming to us. We normally ship either out of Yantian port in China or out of Hong Kong. It'll go through the Panama Canal and then up to Savannah, Georgia, where it's trucked us, and we'll see what that looks like on the other end. If you'd like to learn more about how we got started or how model trains are made, there's an awesome about 50-minute video on how model trains are made on our YouTube channel. You can check that out. It's pretty detailed. So this was our first shipment, and you'll notice that we're starting to run out of money, so all the boxes had to sit on the floor. And the first shipments came in on cardboard pallets. And this is our son about 18 months later. And it was pretty awesome. He used to get so excited about unloading containers and we didn't have to pay them. Now he wants paid. I don't understand why. So that was our first shipment. And our second shipment came in March of 16. And we were doing less than container load in those days, and we would do land bridge. So we'd come into Southern California and then go by rail to Atlanta and then get trucked to us. And, you know, Mike came from Southern California to do quality testing because God didn't bless me with modeling talent at all. And you want Mike to do that. So while Mike's there, we decide we're going to go buy some pallets so we can put everything on pallets and not have it on the floor. And while we're away, Michelle calls me. And she's like, Shane, you've got to get back here right now. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, I don't have time to explain. The shipment's a mess. Just get here. So we go racing back. And when we get there, it's your worst nightmare come true. Those 5 pallets that shipped on cardboard, when they got to Southern California, guess what they did? They put them in water, set them in water. And what happens to cardboard? It disintegrates. So the forklift operator was really kind on all 5 pallets, about yay high, skewers them all, lets the boxes below fall in the water, takes 2 of them and puts them on wood pallets, then takes the wet, puts on the dry, and then for the other 3 pallets, I guess they just got frustrated and said enough's enough and literally threw it on the floor of a 53-foot dry van. So now we're like, what are we going to do? And the guy who was ordering back then, he was nuts. He ordered 4,000 operator cars, 8,000 rivet counter cars, way too many. That crazy person was me. And we decide we'll start with the operators first since there's fewer. And so our church comes that weekend and we start playing this game called Shake the Box. Shake the box. If it rattles, put it in this pile. We'll do that later. If it doesn't rattle, put it in this pile, and that's where we'll start. And so we start going through this inspection, and believe it or not, this turns out to be a tremendous blessing. As we're going through, we learn that all the bolster heights, or the coupler heights, are off about 5 to 10 thousandths of an inch. And we didn't know why until much later, but we found out we'd shipped the factory a KD height gauge factory sealed, because that's the standard, right? Well, when it got to China, they took a McHenry coupler and stuck in the KD height gauge, and that made all the bolsters off. So now we've got 12,000 cars that we've got to shim. So on a Monday, we send out an email letting folks know what's going on. By Tuesday morning, we're getting calls from the local Model Railroad Club as well as some modelers from across the country. And our church comes, and Mike's there, and over the course of a week, we fix everything. And during that same time, we sent some models to James Wright on YouTube, or JLWI 2000. And James ordered some rivet counter cars, and a couple things worth noting. In the days of the tank car, when they first came out, they were unit train cars. We had people that had 100 plus cars on order. And the operator cars have plastic couplers. The rivet counter cars have die-cast couplers. Well, after everybody's gone home, James calls me and says, Shane, these cars won't stay coupled. And I'm like, James, what are you talking about? We've never experienced this. So he tells me what he's doing, and in those days there was absolutely nothing in our office, so I set up a loop of track on the floor, and just like Thomas the Tank, right, put a locomotive on and start adding cars, and we get to 12 cars. You go as absolute fast as that train will go, and then you stop as quick as you can. A slack action happens, and they open up every single time. So now we need 8,000 cars with new couplers as well. Mike and I have to be going to China the very next week. We get a hold of the factory. We're like, we need a new design as soon as we get there. And we get over, and they have a new coupler ready for us. And for about 30 seconds, we think we're going to revolutionize couplers. We're playing with these couplers, and they're super silky smooth, unbelievable. And then the pin falls out. And the pin falls out every time, so the knuckle comes apart. So we send the designers back to the drawing board. They come back the next day with a new design, and they've got a conical shaped and knurled or bumpy pin. And as you open and close the knuckle, that drives it in. That fixes the problem. And the factory makes 20,000 couplers. I put them in my carry-on bag and bring them back from China. You should get through customs. That was a whole lot of fun. And we get back, and we have help lined up every day for 2 weeks. And we have different people cycling in and out every day. And we get to the end of the 2 weeks, and we still have quite a few cars left, but no more help. And it's just Mike and Joe and Paul and I fixing cars. Michelle's running stuff back and forth to the warehouse. And on that very first day, we got like 100 cars done. Still had well over 1,000 to go. And we get a call from the guy in the bottom right corner. That's Mark from the local Model Railroad Club. He's like, Shane, how's it going? I'm like, Mark, we're dying. I don't know how we're going to do this. And he says, well, let me see what I can do. I'll be up in the morning with some help. Mark shows up Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. He's got 15 people with him, the most we'd had up to that point. And we get to work on the cars. We bring in lunch for everybody, bring in dinner, and then try to send everybody home because they've got families and jobs. And they're like, no, we're staying until this is done. And they stayed till 1:30 in the morning on Wednesday morning. And we didn't tell them at the time, but they made a tremendous difference. And they're actually one of the reasons for the road trip. You see, the local club, like Blissfield, you guys give back to your community. You make a tremendous difference. And here's the difference they made. If you know anything about credit cards, they take 2 days for deposits to hit your bank. And so by staying till 1:30 in the morning on Wednesday morning, when we came into the office later that day, we could bill credit cards. What was Friday? Payroll. Guess what wasn't in the bank? Enough money to cover payroll. If they hadn't stayed until 1:30 in the morning, we couldn't have made payroll on Friday and we'd have been out of business. That's how close we came to not making it and why clubs are so important to their communities. Reminds me of a saying that Mike used to say to me pretty often, and thank goodness he doesn't say it to me as much anymore. It happens from time to time. But he says, you know, Shane, God didn't bring us this far to fail. And I really get that now. These are just some of the charities that we give to on a monthly basis, and we really try to keep it local. And then also, too, we've been really blessed to be able to give back to the preservation world as well as the industry. This is the number 26 turbine in Ogden, Utah. We were blessed to be able to give them the seed money so they could sandblast the locomotive, make it weather tight, and then repaint it so it'll be there for generations to come. We've also been involved with 2716 in Ravenna, Kentucky, and there we met the folks from CSX. And if you're not familiar with the CSX Pride in Service program, there are 3 locomotives that CSX painted specially. They're for military, first responders, and police. And there's 5 charities on them that benefit those folks as well as their families. And CSX said, hey, we'll give you the inside track on this. All we ask is you make a donation to those charities. It's like, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Happy to do it. So if you bought any or all of these locomotives, everyone at ScaleTrains wants to give you the biggest thank you because you've made a difference in people's lives. Because of your purchases, we were able to donate $7,000 to each of the 5 charities for a total of $35,000. So thank you for making a difference. And then we won't dwell on this slide. We'll go right to the next one, and we'll go right to Time to Model. But out of that was born Time to Model. This is something we do on a pretty regular basis, almost every week in our newsletter. It's how-to articles from weathering to maintenance to prototype information, all kinds of things like that that comes out in our newsletter because we want it to be way more than just a sales newsletter. And then from that was born the road trip as well. And we thought we would do 1 to 2 dates per state. And so 50, 75 dates. I think tonight is 108 or 109. Yeah, I think tonight's our 108th meet and greet. Our now 130th club that we visited from across the country. In fact, when we get back on Friday, we'll be on the road 50 weeks since the end of August of 21. And still got some more to do. These are the shields that we created for each road trip. And then from there, we've been blessed with a ton of growth. Our brands have grown. We acquired the MTH S-Scale line and we revived the S-Helper brand, refreshed that logo. We'll talk about Fox Valley here in just a minute. We also acquired ExactRail. A lot of that's going to morph into Rivet Counter and another brand we'll talk about here in a minute. There's been a ton of ExactRail product that's been out of production for 10 or more years. We are going through all of that tooling now, some 80 plus freight cars, and getting them all into the cycle for lineup. There'll be things you haven't seen in a long time get announced here soon. And then I mentioned Fox Valley. You know, we talked about those 4 distinct brands. One of the challenges that happens when you acquire other companies is shoehorning them into your brands. They just don't quite fit because you haven't designed them from the ground up. So think of Fox Valley as a merger brand. You'll bring MTH into the brand, you'll bring some Fox Valley, you'll see some ExactRail there. And our first steam locomotive is sitting here on the table. That's the Norfolk and Western J. And of course, it's got the matching passenger cars. Next will be the Berkshire with the heavyweight passenger cars. We're actually tooling 2 new cars for that. So it'll be a 7-car set now. Then it'll be the Daylight and the matching passenger cars. After that will be the UP Challenger and the UP cars. Then it'll be the DM&IR Yellowstone and the OR cars. And then we'll continue to cycle through all of the ex-MTH steam locomotives. And we've been very blessed. We've grown a ton. We've grown from the original 4. We now have 24 team members spread across 6 states. We're getting new product shipments all the time. That really helps your cash flow. And then, probably the biggest question we get all the time as we travel is, have you ever thought about this? You ever thought about that? Somebody was asking me about an SD18 tonight. We're investing a ton in all new products. And between HO and N-Scale for the last several years, we're right at about $1 million a year in new projects, probably 25 plus projects in the pipeline right now that haven't even been announced yet. So there's a lot of new stuff coming. And we've got some new services coming this year. One's going to be a loyalty program. Another one is going to be, just found out about this week, it's going to get done, is the Notify Me program. We like to keep our inventory really tight. Our philosophy is let's sell out and then we'll make more down the road. And with the Notify Me program, if there's something that's sold out on pre-order and you want to, we always get cancellations, happens. And so you can actually say notify me, and if any cancellations happen, you'll get an email saying, hey, this product's available. And we'll also share a new service that we, or a service that we launched last year, and that's our pre-order guarantee. If you place a pre-order with us and you have your credit card on file and you're on auto bill, if we don't fulfill your pre-order, we'll put $1,000 merchandise credit on your account. That's how confident we are that we'll fulfill your order. And then last year we acquired a major stake in Virtual Railfan. If you don't know what Virtual Railfan is, it is a live streaming real train camera service. So we have over 60 locations across the United States, over 100 cameras, and that, by the way, is getting ready to grow tremendously. And you're probably wondering, well, why in the world would a model train company invest in something like this? Well, here's the reason. You see, the biggest magazine in our industry reaches about 80,000 subscribers a month. Virtual Railfan, between the website and the YouTube channel, has 450,000 subscribers, 750,000 unique visitors a month, and nearly 2 million views. There's a lot of people out there that have an interest in real trains, and our thought process is let's expose them to model railroading, and we'll grow the hobby and grow our business at the same time. And then when we wrap up the road trip, we are going to throw a party like none other in Tennessee, and we're going to wrap up during the 2026 NMRA National Convention and National Train Show. Would love to have you come down to Chattanooga and celebrate with us. On the Thursday before the show, we're going to have we believe it's going to be a double-headed steam excursion out of TVRM or Tennessee Valley. One of the locomotives will be TVRMs, and we're working on getting an outside locomotive to come in to double head with it. All of our team will be on board as car hosts, and then we're also going to have some special guests with us. Pele Soberg looks like he's going to come back from Denmark and do some clinics during the week. James Wright's now living in the Chattanooga area, and we'll have a ton of other special guests as well. Would love to have you come down and celebrate with us. And then we'll have one more slide after this. I'll open it up to questions and answers. Anything you've ever wanted to ask a model train manufacturer, here's your opportunity. Just takes one to get the party started. The green shirt.
When you guys run a ScaleTrains locomotives, how many do you make per road number? About. I mean, I know it varies based on.
Yeah, it varies very widely, but I'll give you kind of a ballpark. So on a typical locomotive, we'll do 6 railroads, 6 road numbers, so that's 36 SKUs. An average production run is in the neighborhood of 3,000 pieces total. So the runs aren't very big. Yes, sir.
What's the best way to try and get a new product to be developed or marketed?
You've got something in mind that you've been wanting to do, I take it?
Yeah, I've seen somebody tried it once before and did an absolutely terrible job on it. And if you're familiar with the modern freight car list on Groups.io,
Yep.
back when Jim Ager did a survey or a poll and grouped cars in certain categories. This car happened to be the top of the list for its category. The outfit in Milwaukee did an absolutely terrible job building it, and it's never been touched since.
So a couple of things on something like that. If you've got suggestions, send us an email at ideas@scaletrains.com with what your suggestion is. We are out 3 years on new development right now with what we call a bullpen for years 4 and 5. We're always looking for new project ideas. One of the things that can really leapfrog a project is if someone comes to us and says, hey, here's the roster, here's photos for each one of those, not just roster shots, but walk-arounds, detail photos. Here's the builder's drawing. The more documentation you can come with, if it's a project that has legs, I can tell you we would jump on that a lot faster, because then that project can come to market more quickly. It just depends on how unique the project is. That we'd have to evaluate that piece of it, but we're always on the hunt for things that are new.
Thank you.
I'll go here.
What's your connection with MTH?
We bought their HO and their S
Okay.
tooling.
All right.
Yep. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Love to see you doing the CSX heritage units.
We're really excited about the heritage unit. So I don't know if you guys know or not, but from the Monon unit forward, we've supplied all the paint colors to CSX. We've even done a lot of the artwork for CSX. So I'm really excited about that, because I know there's going to come a day when someone's going to go, "Hey, that color's not right," and I'll be able to go, "Oh yeah, it is. We supplied CSX with that color." So yeah, that's been a great project. Yeah, that one was kind of rough.
Are you doing any Amtrak?
Haven't done any Amtrak yet. Amtrak does require licensing, and they have royalties on each sale. The Amtrak models that have a broad appeal have pretty much all been done. There's a few things like the Pooch that needs done, and a few things, but we'll probably do some Amtrak at some point.
I'm into old gauge, and there's a lot of Amtrak coming out this year.
Yeah, Amtrak sells, definitely sells.
It sells, and they're coming out with heritage locomotives like CSX and everybody else.
Yep.
Does that mean Amtrak gets to make a heritage unit for each railroad in the United States?
I think they'll stay with their heritage schemes. As their paint schemes have evolved through the years.
No, they have New York Central Lightning Strike. New Haven.
The New Haven group did that, didn't they? I didn't think
That's
that
a
was
different
Amtrak.
group.
Yeah, that's the commuter agency did that.
Might be their short-
That's not Amtrak.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't had that
It seems like
conversation.
there's a lot of P-42s out there with different paint.
There are. There definitely are. Yes, sir.
Well, that explains why CSX heritage units are now starting to look good, now that we know that you guys are selling.
Thank you. That's very kind of
And
you.
with the light, when can we expect Drayton and Southern ready to run models?
Oh my goodness. So, I don't know about DNS models, but we are right now working on our G&W license. I actually have that in my inbox to follow up next week. So look for some G&W equipment here in the near future, especially since they've taken delivery of -9. That would be an easy one to do. Yes, sir.
So, of course, it's easy to select maybe some more mainstream railroads. How do you go about selecting some of the Class 2s or even Class 3, like more local railroads when it comes to...
That's where it gets really hard, and that's one of the reasons for the hypotypical line. As a locomotive goes through its life, it gets a lot of modifications, and there's a lot of times it gets modified so much that to do a rivet counter level model and make it accurate is just not cost effective. I'll use a great example. One of my favorites, the Wisconsin Southern did a 40th anniversary SD40-2, and for their ditch lights, they took a piece of plate steel and just bent it, and it's like, how in the world would you light a ditch light like that in a model form? You just can't. And they also took the sand filler hatch on the end of the SD40-2, cut it off, ground it so you'd never know it was there, and then the center of the long hood, they cut a notch and put the sand filler there. Well, you're like, well, just move it, right? It's $10,000 to move that part. And so it's like, there's no way we'll ever sell enough to even not make a profit, let alone recover the tooling investment. So we'll have some projects coming with those that are like second, third, fourth tier owners, and we'll be very clear on these are the details that are not prototypical. This is as close as we can get it. They'll be 90%, 95% of the way there, but there's no way we can afford to get that detail at the rivet counter level. It's a good question. Yes, sir.
I bought a CSX SD40-3, the conversion units,
Yep.
and it was beautiful. When I got it, the screens on top of the cooling fan was missing. I called you folks, and within 2 days I had a replacement.
Good. That's what I want to hear. We take customer support very seriously. We have one full-time person that answers the phones and emails, another full-time person that helps with parts, and then a part-time person who does repairs. So we have a full team. I'm glad to hear they took good care of you. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Well, I really hate to ask this. I see the Norfolk and Western SD45s. Wow, it looks really nice. But man, $400. The prices are just getting out of. It's going crazy. I mean, my investments do pay me a decent wage. But man, there's just no way you're pricing me out of the market.
We're at $299 on that with DCC and sound. If you look at our pricing compared to the market, we're actually at or below, and we're the only ones including. Well, some folks are just now starting to add super capacitors or keep alives. The challenge is, I can tell you, over the last 5 years, our costs have skyrocketed. Our margins have shrunk while we've tried to stay under that $299. There's coming a day when we're going to have to crack that barrier, but we're letting some other manufacturers lead that way first. But unfortunately, costs are they've gone up a lot the last few years.
How about an SW1?
Would be a neat model, something we've talked about. All right. Well, it seems like some of the questions are kind of winding down. So what we'll do, Michelle and I are here afterwards. If you want to chat with us individually, happy to chat with you. If you didn't get a chance beforehand, make sure you get a red bag. I think we've got some more under the table. And also be sure to sign up for the giveaway. If you're not a member of the club, be sure to put your address on the back of the entry blank, and we'll get the road trip pin to you. We'll also send some to the club to give to members. And of course, all the models are here on the table for you to love on and take a closer look at. Happy to do that. So the last slide is our team, and we want to say from our family to yours, thank you for the club for hosting tonight. Thanks everyone for being here. Want to wish you all the best. Good night and God bless. Thank you so much.